1 second, folks. I got to click a few buttons. I think my buttons are all clicked. It says it's done. It's up and running. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. For those who don't realize what's going on, Randy is not here. The official story is that he's off with Leadership Winston-Salem doing community volunteer work. Those who know me know I have a better story, but I'll reserve the right to share that later. Hey, I'm Teddy Burriss. I work for a company called Burriss Consulting. We're social media strategists, trainers, and coaches. But every week I get together at least twice with my good friend Randy, and on Wednesdays, 11:55 a.m., you guys all show up and we have a special guest. We'll tell you about the lady that's on the screen in a minute. Randy not being here, we needed to have somebody help us keep the show in check. So my good friend, Mr. Melvin Scales, joined us. Melvin, would you introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Absolutely, Randy. I said, absolutely, Randy. Right there we go. Well, hey, everybody, I'm Melvin Scales, and I'm delighted to be with you today. Teddy has taken his life in his hands today to ask me to be here to fill in for Randy, but I am looking forward to it and just happy to be here. I'm currently with a company called Meridian Resources. We're a national HR consulting firm. I serve on their executive leadership team, and I am their executive vice president. Been with them for about 8 years, but have been in this space for almost 25 years in talent management and consulting. And again, happy to be here with you and looking forward to it.
Great stuff. Good stuff. Thank you for joining us, buddy. I appreciate it. And I've known Melvin for, I guess, close to 20 years now. And we travel in a lot of the similar circles around the triad of Central North Carolina. Our special guest today is Mauri Schwartz, and Mauri is pronounced Mauri. And Mauri is from the other side of the United States over, you're not in San Francisco, are you? Where are you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Right in.
Yeah. And Mauri is the president of Career Insiders. She's a career coach. She's a resume professional. She helps job seekers in transition. And she loves to share ideas that can help people create value. Mauri, help me introduce yourself a little better. Say hi to our audience.
Hey, everybody. I'm so glad to be here, especially with Teddy and Melvin. Melvin and I, Melvin pointed out, we have the same initials, Melvin Scales and Maury Schwartz. So even though we're on opposite coasts, we have something in common. Anyway, I'm happy to be with this great audience. I've heard so much about it. I've talked to Teddy and then Randy before, and it took a few months to get on their busy schedule. So again, I'm happy to be here. And yes, my job is to help job seekers get jobs. And that may mean I'm doing outplacement for a company. So companies hire me, company HR heads hire my company Career Insiders when they need to lay off employees. It could be 1 or 2 hires that were not good hires, or they don't work out for some reason anymore, or needs change, talent needs change. Could be that they're moving a department to another geographic location, and people are not being moved, or they don't want to move. That happens a lot here from San Francisco. I have clients who move, like a biotech company may move a whole group of lab professionals to Texas or Utah, and people, so they have to rehire. And the people here, they provide services to help people get jobs more quickly. And they understand how important that is to their brand to take care of people who they unfortunately need to terminate. And I'm one of the few, Career Insiders is one of the few outplacement companies that services individual job seekers directly. And we do that because I like that. I like working with individuals. So everybody's an individual, even whether it's an outplacement group or an individual client coming to me. And the good news is that I would say over 95% of our business is word of mouth, referrals. And we focus a lot on mid to senior level professionals, but those same professionals, as they get older, they end up having children who graduate college. And so they hire Career Insiders to help their new job seeker offspring to get settled. And I really like that a lot.
Cool.
And I work with people in all industries, all professions, and basically I don't help people decide what they want to be when they grow up so much. I help them focus, but it's all about the marketing and selling. It's a marketing and sales job to get a job, and I think you all know that. So what I do is help put the pieces together with resume and LinkedIn. That's marketing collateral, how to get your foot in the door, which is a big topic for us today, and what to do when you get in the door.
So yeah, the conversation today, Mauri, thank you. The conversation today is how to get your foot in the door. And then we'll talk a little bit about what do you do once it's there? Can you envision that? The door is open a little bit, you get your foot in there. Now what do you do? So let's talk a little bit about getting your foot in the door. And Don, by the way, use the chat. If you have any question or idea or thought you want to share, drop it in chat. Melvin will bring it up to the conversation. And I like that. Don M is having sweet and salty popcorn. I'll be there, dude. Save me some. So anyway, let's start this conversation with Mauri. Mauri, I'm of the opinion that resumes are basically your ongoing obituary. So, but everybody is told to have a resume. And so we're told to submit our resumes to get a job. How can we share a few ideas, if you could, of how can we use a resume, just a few ideas, a little better, a little different than everyone else to help us get the foot in the door?
Okay, well, so the first thing is a resume is not an obituary, and it's not a historical document. It's a marketing brochure. So thank you for setting it up. So a resume, yes, indeed, it does have your experience in reverse chronological order, but it needs to be set up properly. So you want to focus on what the buyer is looking for. So, it's like on political campaigns, candidates do not send the same mailers to every demographic. Okay, they may send suburban voters one piece of information, and they may send something to people in the inner city, something different. So your resume really needs to focus on what that buyer, what that hiring manager at the company you're looking for is looking for. They have a shopping list. You want to have a document that highlights the items on their shopping list that you have. And all the extraneous information, you just don't have room for that because people don't have that much of attention. So it's not an obituary, it's not historical, although it does represent material in a historical way. And you want to focus on what you've done, what impact you've had on your prior employers. Yeah. So what have you done positive for them that you can tell a future employer that you will do for them? Past future performance is based on the hiring is based on the premise that future performance is predicted by past performance. So you want to prove that or indicate to a new employer or potential employer that what you've done for someone else that's relevant for them.
And that's the reason why I refer to resumes as obituaries, is because most people do not craft a brochure that is focused to that buyer that they want to be bought from or bought by. And so
thank you for that, because it's really, really important. Years ago, people said resumes were going to go away and it would just be a video resume or something like that. Resumes are still around, as well as LinkedIn profiles, which are equally important. But you have to use them wisely and just keep in mind, you've got put yourself in the head of the person who's looking to hire. The buyer. Yeah. Put yourself in their head. What are they looking for? Not what do you want to sell, but what are they looking to buy?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's important because a LinkedIn profile cannot be crafted for each job you're applying for. So what's your thoughts as far as the message you should put on a LinkedIn profile that is fairly static? If you're looking to be looking for the buyer to come get you, what should my profile say?
Well, it's tricky. It can be tricky. you only have one LinkedIn profile, so you want to make sure it's not inconsistent with any of your resume versions. I'm guessing for most people, they don't have vastly different resume. I mean, they're not looking to go in vastly different directions. I mean, some people are. I have clients sometimes, and in that case, you might have less information on your LinkedIn profile, which means you might not get the first look by a recruiter who's looking for certain talent. But on the other hand, at least when they do get your resume and look at it, they're going to go to LinkedIn to see if it matches up. So they're going to go look at you on LinkedIn. So at least you won't show up as it being inconsistent. So for sure, you know, if you only take your resume back to, you know, 10 or 15 years, then don't make your, you know, then your LinkedIn profile shouldn't have jobs that you don't have on your resume. It also shouldn't have, you know, it just titles and company names, they need to be consistent. Otherwise, it's very confusing. And if it's confusing, they're not going to come ask you, why is it confusing? They'll just skip over you and
move
go
on
to
to the next
somebody
one.
else.
Yeah. So absolutely. And by the way, if anybody has any questions or any thoughts, feel free to use the chat. And by the way, I want to know who's new on the show, who is brand new to the show, because those people win a prize. So, hey, let's talk about the next thing.
Me, I'm brand new.
Except for special guests, they don't get prizes. So. Hey, let's talk about this. Everybody who applies believes they're qualified. Everybody who applies for a job, for the most part, they believe they're qualified in some way or another. Others, there are many who go, oh my God, I'm the only one who's qualified. But that's not that opinion. Our opinion doesn't matter. It's the opinion of we'll keep using the word of the buyer. So how do we get noticed if we want, you know, to be noticed above everybody else who is qualified? What's some ideas you have for us to get noticed, Mauri?
Sure. So what we've talked about the resume and LinkedIn, that's what I call the marketing part of this process. And the next part is the sales part. And anybody knows that a good sales, I don't know if anybody knows it, but salespeople really know it. If you're good at sales, then you have a way of finding the decision maker. No disrespect to any of you HR people, but HR, unless you're applying for a job at HR, then HR is the gatekeeper, not the decision maker. The decision maker is the hiring manager. So a good salesperson knows that they have to get to the decision maker. So here's this, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, I've applied using their applicant tracking system, whatever way it is, and I don't hear back. I don't hear back. Or I immediately get a standard, you know, automated message that says, we have your resume, we'll get in touch with you if we like you. Or we have your resume and no, it's not going to work. So but that means the machine is doing, you know, if it's automatic like that, that means the machine has decided that you're not a fit. Then you can go back to the resume and make sure you've got all the right buzzwords and things to match so that the machine can do that. But there's so many variables that, you know, you're basically, once you put yourself inside the machine, inside the applicant tracking system, you and potentially hundreds or thousands of other people who all think they are qualified, even if they aren't as qualified, but they say, oh, I applied anyway because I figure it can't hurt. Well, all of these resumes, all of these applications are crowding out the system. So if you go back to the door, getting your foot in the door analogy, it's like everybody, all of those hundreds of people are waiting to squish into the same front door at the same time. So it's like, you know, if you're at the back of the line, you're not going to get in. So you want to make, you know, so everybody's trying to, it reminds me of when I used to live in Italy, trying to get on or off a bus. So
go ahead. Go ahead. Finish that, Mauri.
Okay. So everybody's trying to get, you know, squish in. So the point is, how do you succeed there? And I always say, you want to find another point of entry, whether it's a back door or an open window. You don't want to break through a window. You don't want to like do a break and entering, but if you can find another way in. So the best way to do this is to identify the decision maker and go directly to the decision maker.
Yeah. Melvin, did you got a thought or a comment?
Oh yeah, we've got a question in the chat. I think Lisa said, hey, what if the hiring manager doesn't want you to talk? to, or doesn't want to talk to you and tells you to talk to HR, is that a sign of the culture? She's saying, hey, is this thinking going to change when the high number of roles open up due to the great resignation?
So there's two different questions there. Question number one is, what if the hiring manager shoos you back to HR? Why does that happen, Mauri?
Well, because the hiring manager doesn't want to be bothered. So, and that happens. I mean, they're busy people. You have to recognize that. You can't be a pest. So if they do that, then, what I would do is I would go back to HR. I would try to identify the recruiter on that position or someone in HR and say to them, well, Bob told me that I should be talking to you about this job. So, at least you're, even though, the best bet is if Bob, the hiring manager, passes your email directly to HR, but, and they do sometimes. But in this case, I would go back to HR and say, the hiring manager told me I should talk to you. That's better than the person who's coming in without that, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And often the reason Bob tells you to go back to HR is because Bob doesn't know you from Adam's house cat, whoever that is.
yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, the interesting thing is I talk to hiring managers and they're looking and quite often they're not getting the candidates they want from recruiting. And it could be because the candidates aren't available. It could be because recruiters aren't getting the information from the hiring manager that they should in the first place, because hiring managers say, you go find these people, but they don't spend the time to give the recruiters details. It could be the recruiters, a lot of recruiters are new. They're afraid to ask the questions. And so there are a lot of different things. So, a lot of hiring managers are going, oh yeah, I need this person. And I'll send it back to HR and say, talk to this person. They look good. It's worth a try. It can't hurt you. It can hurt you if you become a pest.
Yeah, yeah, and it won't. And you're not going to get any. You're going to be in line with those 100 people who are trying to get their foot in the door if you don't go around and find another door to connect with someone who knows someone who can introduce you to the hiring manager for a conversation.
Well, exactly. So I always say, identify the hiring manager, and then this is where LinkedIn is really useful, and see who you might know who knows the hiring manager.
Yeah.
And see if you can get a warm intro. Obviously, that's the best thing. Not just anybody at the company, but somebody may not be at the company, but they're connected on LinkedIn. And not everybody we're connected to are our bosom buddies. We know by now we're all connected to a lot of people. But if you can get that warm intro, then you're a lot better off. And then what you want it to do is you want to ask, let's say you want to ask Alice to introduce you to Bob. And Alice says, sure, send me your resume and I'll forward it along. You go, well, I don't want you to have to bother with that. Why don't you just email us both and introduce us, and then I'll take it from there. Because you want to know that Alice did it. She didn't just say, oh, I'll send your resume, and you'll never know whether she really did or not. You know that she did it, when she did it, and you'll have the contact information, Bob's contact information.
Yeah.
So, and then Bob is expecting to hear from you. Once Alice makes the intro, go, move forward and present your case.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I facetiously referred to the resume as your obituary. You don't want to lead with that document. You want to lead with the opportunity to have a conversation. Yeah. Hey,
make sure you're controlling where that thing is going too.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. You want to be in control. It's a situation where you don't have a lot of control. So wherever you can get control, then that's what you should do. That's exactly right, Melvin.
Yeah, we'll talk about the great resignation thing going on in a few minutes here. Let's talk about, so we talked about resume and LinkedIn and your LinkedIn profile, but LinkedIn has a whole lot more value, as those who know me know I know. But let's talk about another value proposition of LinkedIn, Mauri, and that is the whole idea of this networking strategy. You alluded to the fact that, and it's true, that a lot of us are connected with people that we don't know or don't know well. And that limits the value of LinkedIn. Talk a little bit about that networking strategy you talked about to get the foot in the door, the LinkedIn networking.
So, well, this is your area of expertise, Teddy. I don't want to step on your toes.
No, I'm just the measly little host here. I mean, that show. What's that show that's on at night? Jeopardy, or what's it? A Wheel of Fortune. I can't remember the host of Wheel of Fortune.
Pat Sajak and
Yeah, he said,
Savannah Wells.
I'm just the host. I'm nobody special. You're the one that's special. So let's hear your thoughts on that networking to get your foot in the door.
Okay, well, so what I usually say to people about LinkedIn, I advise them not to connect with strangers, because so let's say you get an invitation from someone you don't know. Then what I would do is I'd look at their profile and I'd go, who else are they connected to, and what do they do? And I go, well, if they can help me, then I'll probably say, sure, I'll do that. And then since they asked me, I'll take their email address and put it on my mailing list because they contacted me. But at any rate, and then other times, so when, it's important to, as much as you can, to try to develop a relationship. So if you meet someone at a networking event, then those are the people I would definitely connect with, so that you can have some sort of relationship. Because if you ask, for instance, I recommend not contacting a hiring manager by asking them to connect on LinkedIn. So if you don't have the ability to use InMails with a paid account, then the only way you can contact that person, and they don't have some people have, anybody can send me messages, and hiring managers don't have that generally. But you can, the only way you can directly contact them through LinkedIn is to ask them to connect with you. Well, first of all, you only get like a very short intro. You can't attach your resume or anything. Of course, they could look at your profile. But what you're doing is you're asking that person to share their network with you. And that's presumptuous. That means it's not just that you were using it to say, hi, here I am, but you are asking them to let you look at their network and their contacts. And I think like I said, I think that's presumptuous. So that is not the way to start a relationship, by sort of barging into their world. So then you have to try to reach them another way.
Yeah. Before we talk about the next question that you have, Melvin, I'll offer, add to what Mauri shared. This is why you build connections with people who you know. And the more you get to know people, the easier it is for you to get to know other people. And so if I want to connect with Mauri and I've never met her, I'm going to ask my friend Vinny to introduce me to her. And if you treat your network right, your network will easily and happily want to help you with introductions so you can meet that next person. Yeah.
Exactly. No, that's really true. You go, oh yeah, Mauri. Yeah, I remember talking to her, or whatever. And the other thing about that you alluded to is that one of my favorite sayings to people is, doing something for someone automatically makes them want to return the favor. So in networking, don't forget when someone asks you to introduce you, step out, unless it's just a bad business decision to help to do that, then step out there and do it, and do it right away, because it what goes around comes around.
Absolutely. Melvin, you got another one come up?
I sure do. It's from our favorite Don, Missouri, and Mauri. He's asked the question. Look, at the end of the day, the world of resumes has been the norm, right? And then what took its place and kind of made it a little better was LinkedIn. So as you look into the future, Mauri, Don wants to know, hey, what is going to be the tool for the future that would perhaps even replace LinkedIn? He even suggested that they would call it the Mauri.
So wait,
I
Mauri,
better get.
Before you answer that question, let me remind you that Randy would say here, Mauri, do you have a crystal ball? Because I know Teddy does. So here's my crystal ball. Okay.
All right.
So
well,
use your crystal ball and help us understand what.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't have a crystal ball, but if we're going to name it Mauri, I better get to work on this. First of all, I think that resumes of some form are going to still be around for a while, because they've lasted longer than anybody said they would, and I don't, yes, more is done with technology. So we have LinkedIn and we have the resumes online. I don't know. But I'll be here to learn it when it comes up. So, and I'll be, if I think it's a good tool, for my clients, then and I'm still around, then I'll help them use it. That's what I say, you know. But I mean, the good news about the work I do is working with people at, you know, mid to senior level is I'm working with hiring managers all the time. And just because today they're looking for a job doesn't take away from the fact that they're also hiring people in their own organizations. And so I talk to them and I ask them, what are you looking for? How do you evaluate candidates? And is that working for you? You know, what questions are you asking? What do you want to know? So, I mean, otherwise I can't teach candidates, job seekers, how to get the job unless I know how managers look at things. And that has evolved.
Yeah.
You know, let's hope it's not the TikTok.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, like I said, they said a while back that it would be all video. That was years ago. That was 10 years ago. That has not happened.
Yeah. And just like business cards keep adjusting and pivoting. You know, now you got digital business cards and you got, you know, you can, you know, connect with people directly through LinkedIn on your mobile app. But business cards are still a big part of business for most of us are out here today. So absolutely. I don't want to forget about that conversation. And we'll come back to it about the Great Resignation. So let's introducing yourself. Let's talk about that. How do you introduce you? Just your thoughts, Mauri, on how do you introduce yourself? And I had a conversation with a lady this morning, and I said, "Well, I need a 10-second intro for you." She goes, 10 seconds? That's too short. What are your thoughts in a conversation or a written conversation or maybe a verbal? What's a great way to introduce yourself so that you can get a better chance of getting your foot in the door and being able to move through the door?
Well, the first thing you want to do with whoever it is you're introducing yourself to is to let them know you know them, you know their situation, you have some understanding of where they're coming from. And, you know, whether it's, you know, something you've read about them, about their company, you know, something that leading with something that's complimentary. And then, you know, and basically what you're telling them is what's interesting about them that you already know. Now, of course, if you're in a networking meeting or something and you've never met the person, then I might lead with asking a question so that I can then fill in with, here's how I, you know, can match up and help you. Yeah,
I'm with you. I have a class that I teach called the 17-second, what's it called? Commercial. You know, your elevator pitch, because everybody's teaching 60-second elevator pitches, and most people that you drop your elevator pitch on are not interested in that whole story that you had. And so when you collapse your elevator pitch, your commercial, your introductory statement into 10 or 15 seconds, that creates the opportunity for more inquiry, more curiosity. So especially for those that it's relevant to.
Right.
Yeah. So Melvin, do you have an elevator pitch that you use when you're out and about? And is it, I know you've refined it over the years, and it's a pretty simple statement, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it is very succinct now, because, you know, our bandwidths are like this. It used to be like the 2-minute drill, then it turned into the 30-second commercial, then it talked about a 15-second spot. I've even seen an individual who actually put their elevator pitch, you ready for this, on a baseball, and it was said, "I'd like to talk to you, call me, my number," and they gave this person a free baseball along with their phone number.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah.
That's kind of hard to carry that around in your pocket. A whole bag full of baseballs, but go on.
Can't throw it away either.
Yeah. So, well, especially, I don't know if you can see what's behind me, but I'm a San Francisco Giants fan. So,
that's what brought it to mind when I saw it.
Yeah. So, but I got a new client one time. I was in the airport in Orlando coming back home, and I was taking my car back, and I started talking to these two men from this company in San Francisco, and I was asking them about the company and what they do. And then I said, and they said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, let me ask you this. Do you have a LinkedIn presence for your, your senior customer facing people? And they go, well, we're on there, but it doesn't say anything, or no, we're not even on there. And I said, well, what I can do is, what I do is I write the profile. One of the things I can do for your company is to write the profiles of all your customer facing employees, you as president, CEO, your key salespeople, because when you reach out to potential customers to talk to them about your product, they're going to look you up on LinkedIn.
So what you did, you didn't tell them what you did. You asked them a question that led to a conversation. That's a great way to do an elevator pitch. Let me do the half-hour break. Hey, thank you everybody for showing up. This is Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. We do these conversations every week. We bring special guests in with conversations, ideas, and perspectives that are important to people in our businesses, our communities, and our people who are in job search. Lots of great conversations that we do every week at 11:55 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We love our audience, we love our sponsors, and we appreciate the opportunity to do it. Today, our co-host is Melvin Scales, covering for Randy, and our special guest and speaker today is Maury Schwartz. So good conversation, Maury. So again, anybody have any questions, drop them in chat, and we'll be happy to answer them. Melvin, you got another one?
Yeah, that was a great comment Lisa just made. She said, hey, how about networking with people in the Uber and Lyft world?
Yeah.
A lot of people have gotten connections that way.
Yeah, it's a billboard riding around the country, riding around the city, picking people up. Absolutely. Yeah. So, Maury, that introduction, the conversation was introductions that creates a positive response. Mm-hmm. That's a really important perspective. I would wager you've met people whose 60-second commercial, especially people in job search, their 60-second commercial includes that horror story about they lost their job. How does that help?
Well, I don't know that it does help.
I was being facetious.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you don't want to be talking about negatives. You want to be talking about what you can do for somebody. If but again, if you don't ask any questions, you don't know whether they need what you can do. On the other hand, maybe they know someone. So I would just stick with back to the resume when I said you want to talk about achievements. Maybe your intro should start out with which should include a brief example. I helped this guy get a job. It took a year, but we worked through all the details, and given the fact that he's at an age where most people aren't getting jobs, he's at whatever it is, but make it short and don't talk about it. Make it positive.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always got to be positive. What was it? Dale Carnegie said, words the effect of never criticize, and his number one principle in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, is never criticize, condemn, or complain. And what that philosophy says to us is everything we share publicly and even privately needs to be in some positive way. Now, we could be dealing with a crisis, we could be dealing with a problem, but we need to have that conversation in a positive way. I want to say more often than a negative way, but we shouldn't have it in a negative way as well.
No, it's true. I mean, I always tell, so we I don't know if we're ever going to get around to talking about interviews, what to say when you get there, but you never want to talk negatively about a company or people you work with, even if someone brings it up and says, oh, I heard that so-and-so at that company was terrible to work with. How is it for you? Don't take the bait.
Well, so you can't use phrases like, well, when it comes down to people being jerks, he was one of the best jerks I ever met. No, Teddy.
No, you say, well, I don't know. We worked well together. I didn't have, seemed fine with, I had a good relationship with so-and-so. So
Melvin, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's really funny, Maury, I understand that you're from Alabama, so you'll appreciate that originally, and being, in the South with Teddy and here in North Carolina, you know, there's a phrase that's code for I really don't like you and I don't like anybody. And it's called bless his heart.
Yes, I knew yeah.
So if you ever hear that, you got a problem. So, but yeah, it's not a good idea to condemn, criticize, and do those kinds of things. You know, it's so important nowadays, even more so, just to build people up, build the situation up, and add value. Mauri, you're hammering that, and it's got to be that way, because you know what? It's, you know, just because people look a certain way, talk a certain way, you know, at the end of the day, companies want to know, are you able to help me? Can you help me achieve and overcome my problems here? And that's it. I mean,
Well, nobody wants a whiner or a complainer or a negative person. I noticed there was a comment from my friend, my Betty Forrest Weld, in the chat.
Well, so you got a stalker that showed up here today?
Well, he's a client. He's a former client of mine. So I'm happy to see him.
Well, welcome, Forrest. Well, and Forrest is right. People,
He's a hiring manager.
Not just hiring managers, but people want to hang out with people who can do it, people who are positive, people that, you know, have that can-do positive attitude. Absolutely. Good point. Let's talk about another area. And we touched on a little bit. This is, you know, there's lots of things we should say, lots of things we should not say. There's lots of things we should do and lots of things we should not do if we're trying to get that buyer interested. Let's break this up a little bit. How about things that we should say? Let's expand on that a little bit more and more. What's some things we absolutely should make sure that we say to that hiring manager if we want them to buy us?
Well, you want to say, you want to make sure that what you tell them includes the items on their shopping list.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, going into a store, it's really nice if the store has something up front. You know how stores have on the aisles, if it's a bigger store, they have, I'm sorry?
They're called end caps.
Yeah, okay. So, you know, you can see which aisle you need to go to because there's something, you know, there's a list, you know, on the end of the aisle. So basically, I don't have to go down every aisle till I find, you know, peanut butter. So if your person that you're speaking with and who's looking to hire someone is looking for, you know, peanut butter, bread, jam, and bananas,
Bananas,
peanut butter and jelly and banana sandwich, then you want to make sure that you tell them that you have all of those things in your store.
Yeah. That's not the end cap. That's the signage. I'm with you. So I'm right there with you. I'm walking down, I'm looking for peanut butter. I'm looking for honey, not jam. And I'm looking for the bananas. And I grab the bananas coming in because they're usually at the front door. And what I heard you say there, Mauri, is that put at the front door the most important stuff that you want them to get, which means on your resume and your LinkedIn profile and your messaging, put the most important things that you know they want in that up top.
Yeah, so people don't like to, one of the most, not feared, but, you know, disliked questions that people get in interviews is, tell me about yourself. And that's exactly the time to put up the sign.
Yeah.
You know, put up your list right there. Tell me about yourself. You know, well, I'm peanut butter, bread, honey, and bananas.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'm going to be your next Elvis Presley impersonator, and I will tell you about the peanut butter and the bananas. Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So let's go to the other piece. How about the things we shouldn't do and should do? How about things that we shouldn't do in the context of getting our foot in the door and getting through? What's some things we should not do? Hey, wait a minute, Mauri, before you answer that, how about the audience? Drop in chat something that you know you should never do if you're trying to get the attention of the hiring manager. Anybody drop that in chat. And while Mauri, you're sharing your thoughts.
Well, I think it goes back to one of the things I said earlier. You know, you want to be assertive, but you don't want to be a pest. So you don't want to keep hammering, the same person and the same company over and over again, because then they remember you and not fondly. So that's one thing you don't want to do. You don't want to be arrogant. You want to have some humility while you're assertive as well. So, so that's that. You want to, you don't want to be rude to people on the way in the door.
Yeah.
You want to, there's just common courtesy. If you can think of those things, then those are some of the things you should do, and conversely, shouldn't do the things that are against that. And again, and I can't, we talked a lot about not being negative, and that's really one of the most important things. People like positive people to be around.
And go ahead, Melvin. Go ahead, buddy.
Mauri, you said something really, really important. When I would interview people, back in the day, the deal is that they come into your office and they come up to see you. I would immediately go to the receptionist, whoever he or she is, and I said, "How did they treat you? What?" Yeah. And if they tell me that they were dismissive and all that, whatever I was thinking, I've kind of put it on the back burner.
Yeah. Yeah. So two other things that I wouldn't do is don't come late and don't come really early. So, these people say, "Oh, I always get there 15 or 20 minutes early." And I go, "What do you do for the 15 or 20 minutes? Are you sitting in the lobby?" This is obviously today with Zoom meetings and things like that, then it doesn't happen, that way. But in-person meetings, I go, "You sitting there in front of the reception in the lobby," and then the receptionist tells the hiring manager you're there, and the hiring manager goes, "Well, they're earlier. Do they expect me to come get them early or what?" I mean, it's just, it's just not a comfortable thing. You want to get there like 5 minutes ahead. If you need to get there and go to the bathroom or whatever, and actually I recommend that you do get there and go to the bathroom, just take one last look at yourself, and, and when you're doing that, be sure to smile and say hello to people, whether it's in the elevator or in the bathroom or the receptionist.
I'm a big fan of that receptionist, i.e. sometimes considered the gatekeeper. And I don't like referring to them as that, because they're just a human serving a role. But when you can create a relationship with that person at the front gate, that really can pay huge dividends. As Melvin said, how you treat that person could very well, and if you do it right, you want it to cascade over to the hiring manager, so they know that you treated that person with the highest level of respect as you would anybody else. Furthermore, the better they know you, the easier it is for you to walk in that door and say, "Hey, I want to say hi to Melvin today. I know I don't have an appointment, but you let him know I'm here, so he's got 5 minutes." It can really make a huge difference in this whole process of getting your foot in the door and being able to get through it. And I'm with Don. Don threw out, don't try to break the tension of a conversation or an icebreaker conversation with my words, a snarky joke. You got to do that. You got to know where you can tell a joke or where you can bring in humor and do it appropriately.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I definitely, telling a joke is a big risk. It can be a big risk. It's a challenge.
Especially if you don't know that person, they don't know you.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And so one of the other things to think about is that you need to, there's a little bit of a tightrope you want to walk between reflecting their mood and also keeping your upbeat mood. So sometimes interviewers are just stern and they're not giving you any good vibes or any vibes at all about things. And, sometimes they think they have to be that way. And other times that's just the way they are. So you don't want to absorb all of that, because then that takes you down. But at the same time, you definitely don't want to be, one with jokes and humorous comments if they're totally, like serious. So I tend to, I tend to be on the side of, looking at the humorous side of things, but, you have to really understand your audience and listen. Use your eyes, look at their face and their body, their expressions and so forth to see And some people, you know what? Some people don't know how to do that,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
which is hard.
yeah. Melvin, you have a thought?
Mauri, you just said what you were sharing is absolutely spot on, and just makes me wonder, looking back at my career, how I ever got a job. So anyway.
What was it that I said? Thank you.
You know, I grew up, you know, back in the day, I was a stand-up comic in school. And, you know, the point is, I'm wondering, how did I ever get a job? Because I'm sure I said something.
Yeah, but you know what? But you probably said it to the right audience.
Yeah, maybe. And maybe you, sorry for me, you know, I don't know. You can't make a living as a comic, so he wants to work with us.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, you know, you do have your personality. I mean, you know, it's this thing everybody talks about, your authentic self. You want to go to work, take your authentic self to work. So, you know, they want to know what they're hiring too. So I'm not saying turn off your personality. And you know, we get hired by the right people usually. Although I've had a couple of jobs that were wrong, but we won't.
I'm with you. Yeah, we have to manage our authentic self. And sometimes my authentic self is too much for people to handle. Mm-hmm. So I have to control that. And I think it's a big part of getting your foot in the door, and how to get through the door is to manage yourself. You know, Melvin knows me well enough to know I've got a lot of jokes. I mean, I cut up and play like anybody, but I know when and where I should or should not do that. Yeah, I think I do that.
Great question from Lisa. She said, hey, what about the people you're interviewing with? What if none of them are on LinkedIn?
Ooh, well, that tells you something. That tells you something, you know, that means, you know, it's really hard. You know, you go in with, at least when you get the interview scheduled, at least try to make sure you know the titles of the people that you're going to interview with. And you can ask whoever sends you the schedule to tell you that, and how long you're going to be interviewing with them. But, you know, it's interesting if they're not, you know, I mean, there are people who aren't on LinkedIn, and it just kind of makes me think, well, they've been at that company for a really long time, probably.
Yeah. And but the other thing too, is if what I refer to as your target audience is not on LinkedIn, often their influencers are. Mm. So if you can discover who the target audience is in the company, then if you can find somebody that knows someone else in that company, then maybe I can have a conversation with Melvin, and Melvin can introduce me to that other person. Yeah. Yeah. So, Melvin, you get another one?
Yeah. By the way, you know, I know we talked already a little bit about arriving early. You don't want to arrive too early. You want to arrive late. You want to arrive somewhere in the middle. But the question of Greg said, hey, you know what? Are paper thank you notes a part of a bygone era?
Yes, and they've been bygone for a long time. I get clients who sometimes say, well, I send that personal written note because it's so rare these days, and people say they like it because they get mail. Well, the trouble with that is you don't know when it's going to get there. Yeah. So because if you know, the things happen quickly. So I always say, send emails, and if you've interviewed with several people, each person gets a separate email, and send your thank you by email, and do it as soon as you can after the interview while they're still thinking about you. And there's some things in the thank you notes. I have a template about what to include in your thank you note. But the thing about the mailed ones with companies, well, today people are working at home, a lot of them. When are they, you know, if you send it to their work, when are they going to get it? Yeah. And then if it winds through their mail system, if it's a big company, or then when the hiring manager gets it, where do they keep it? You know, nobody's keeping, you know, if it's not electronic, then they look at it and they'll, you know, either throw it away or put it in their drawer and forget about it. So it's good that you sent the letter, but yeah, you should do it electronically.
There are a lot of people who still believe that a paper letter is the right thing to do. I like the idea, but I also am practical, as you just spoke, Mauri, that it's not practical anymore because of our environments we work in, remote working, mm-hmm. digital working, timeliness of getting that message there. I'm a huge fan of what I call a follow-through message, not a follow-up, but a follow-through message, which might mean there's more engagement to happen, to where I acknowledge the conversation. I thank that I'm trying to speak to Pierre's conversation as well. In my opinion, what he's saying a thank you note is you're appreciative and you follow up with, what are next steps? What are my next steps? Inquire as to what your next steps. Hopefully I've already inquired on that. And then show the eagerness for the continued conversation that may lead to the business outcome, which might be a job. Mauri, anything else you can think of in that next note?
Well, yeah, I like to do what I call the 4R thank you letter. And the first one is remember. So basically you start out like you would in most of them. Thank you for the opportunity. You want them to remember who you were. So you say, to interview this morning or whatever, so you do the basic. The next one is to reinforce. And that would be a referral to something that happened in that interview that was a positive, something that the person responded positively to you. I mean, and this can't be a long letter, so you can have one sentence that says, something about talking, I thought our conversation on how to use pivot tables in Excel was really right on point. And I've also done XYZ with it. Then the third R is to recoup. So let's say you answered a question and you had a better answer after you left. We always do that, right? No matter how much we prepare. And so you go, oh, by the way, when we were talking about X, I didn't mention that I've also done ABC. So that's recoup. And the last one is to remind. So if you did what you were supposed to at the end of the interview and you asked them what happens next, or they just offered it up, then you remind them, I look forward to hearing from you on Monday about scheduling the next round of interviews.
Yeah, I get it. So great conversations. And I appreciate the questions come up from the audience as well.
Yeah, they're good.
Forrest shared an HBR. So said that Harvard Business Review has lots of articles on listening skills. And by the way, that's one skill that I know I can constantly improve on. So, all right, the last point, Mauri, myths. What are some myths that job seekers have? Give me 2 of them that you can think of that we need to start ignoring today.
Myths that aren't things we've already talked about.
Well, maybe we have already talked about them, but when you and I are talking, you said that of some myths that the job seekers have, that they should start ignoring, that we rely on too much, and we need to stop relying on these myths.
Okay, so I think one thing is that to go back to that tell me about yourself question. Mm-hmm. Everybody thinks that people want to know their life story. And so they go, well, I was born in, and grew up in
Alabama.
In Alabama. and I came out west to go to college, and I got a degree in mathematics, and then after that I went to work, and blah 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 blah. Yeah, exactly. The person is asleep. Now they may be looking at you with their eyes open, but they're gone in here. Yeah. So they're just eyes glazed over. They want to know what you can do for them. So let's go back to that shopping list to tell them, they're looking for these 4 items, and you want to say, at this company I did this, and when you talk about it, you want to say again achievement with a measurable result. Yeah. Well, that's the tell me about yourself.
Yeah. And another myth that I think too is that job seekers should go out and look for jobs. I say stop looking for a job, first of all. I say look for a conversation. Mm-hmm. But a big part of it is if you're thinking that I'm going to go have an interview to get a job, that's the wrong philosophy to have. You have to bust that whole philosophy and that myth of I'm going to go get a job and change it into I'm going to have a conversation with a business leader about how I can help them.
That's really a good point, which makes me think about one that I have, and that is, don't ask for an informational interview. Everybody tells you when you're looking for a job, go networking and ask people for informational interviews. And I actually like the principle or the idea, but calling it an informational interview, on the other side, it means, oh, I got to spend 30 or 60 minutes with this person. I don't have anything for them, and I don't want to, it's a lot of my time. I just don't have it. And then what does that mean? We're interviewing and yet there's no job. So I say, ask for a chat. So first, don't ask for a job. Don't ask for an informational interview. Ask for a chat. And in the chat, you can ask for advice. So instead of asking for, you talk to them about working with their organization, what it's like, or what their career is like, how did they get to there? And then say, well, what could you tell me, that I could do next?
Yeah, I'm with you. Melvin, any thoughts on that?
Well, I love what Mauri, said about don't ask for a job. I think that's focused on this.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've seen people do constantly, particularly in networking situations, they'll say, hey, I'm so-and-so and so-and-so. Are you all hiring? Well, wait a minute. I don't think so. But when you approach it a different way, where you're trying to start a conversation to have a helping conversation, then it turns into something quite different. And then at the end, of course, you can all say, hey, you know what, based on what I shared with you and what we talked about, might you know someone who might have an interest in my background? Then it takes it to another level.
Yeah.
But you've earned it.
You are absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you. So great conversation. Mauri, I wish I could go on and on and on, but Randy told me I have to shut down at 1 o'clock or we have to pay extra for the executive producer to do this show.
It's only almost 10 here.
I'm with you, dear. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you showing up today. I'll share your website. I'll share your LinkedIn profile, your Twitter, your Facebook page so people can follow you on those sites. Really appreciate you showing up. Melvin, do you have a story that you can share with us for a few minutes?
Story about a job search. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, it sort of combines a few things that we talked about senses of humor and all of that. And I do recall I was actually in an interview with a company called Miller Brewing Company. And that was up in Milwaukee. And the gentleman who interviewed me was Tom Shropshire. Tom was the first African-American vice president of marketing. And he said, I asked him a question. I said, so Mr. Shropshire, how did you get to where you are today? And he had a sense of humor. He said, I worked my blank off. And then I was making a note and and my pen, my mechanical pencil broke. And the lead went up into the air and into his coffee cup. And immediately I said to him, did I mention I played basketball at Wake Forest? And he just laughed and that was it. So again, you got to pick and choose what you do, but you get the message. So that's a story. Hopefully.
Did you get the job?
I did get the offer, absolutely. But Milwaukee is much too cold for Melvin.
Yeah, I get that. And me too. That's a great story. Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you all. I've had such a good time.
Here's my story before we introduce our guest for next week. My story is that, everything's changing. The world is changing all around us. We need to be changing with it. If we're not changing our processes for job search, if we're not changing the things, our actions, we're not changing the work that we do, then what's going to happen is we're going to be acting like dinosaurs in a whole new era. And dinosaurs don't use cell phones. Dinosaurs don't use TikTok. Dinosaurs don't use, all the tools that are available to us today to put ourselves ahead of everyone else who's trying to get their foot in the door. So you've got to adjust and you've got to pivot and you've got to learn to use the new tools, the new processes to get you ahead of everybody else. And that's, by the way, I'm the 63-year-old social media strategist. I am not a freaking dinosaur. So if I can pull it off, you guys can pull it off in your job search journey. Hey, next week, our special guest will be Robin Rashawn. Robin is going to come to us in a conversation about communicating your transferable value. This is a big conversation. People struggle with being able to say, I used to do this, and now I got to present it in a whole new space. It's called transferable skills, transferable value. So Robin's going to come and have that conversation with us next week. Every Wednesday, 11:55 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, lunch conversations with Randy and Teddy. We're looking for more sponsors to help us pull this thing off and make it even better for our special guests and most importantly for our audience. Melvin, thank you very much, buddy, for joining us this week. Appreciate you, buddy. Mauri, absolute privilege to hang out with you. We'll talk another day.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
We will.